Hello, this is Abby.
Dear Abby, this is gonna be a long one.
Oh boy.
Dear Abby, how do you tell the difference between a new exciting crush and a rebound?
Does it matter?
Dear Abby.
Dear Abby,
Dear Abby.
Welcome to our little corner of the internet. This is the Dear Abby podcast. I hope you stay and hang out with us. See you in a sec. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Dear Abby. I'm your host. My name is Abby. Thank you so much for joining me today and for tuning in. We have a fun episode planned. By we, I mean I. I think I say we so I sound less lonely, but it is just me today. I'm excited to talk about what we're going to talk about, which is building resentment and learning to slowly let go of that resentment and turn it into something else. And B, we're talking about how to not build it in the first place as much as possible. Life is complicated and sometimes we're not on our A game in terms of being super introspective and self-aware. So this isn't to add something else to the list of all the things that you should be doing better, whatever. This is something that I think a lot of us feel very deeply about, that we really internally want to experience less resentment in our relationships and more love and openness and connection. Like, who doesn't want that? Now, there actually are a lot of people who probably don't want that, who want to hold on to their resentment because they believe, like sometimes we believe that it's helping us in some way, or it's protecting us, or it's serving us. There might be a time where it does really genuinely feel like it is helping you. I don't think resentment, to me at least, has ever felt productive other than the feeling of hurt or resentment, or the feeling of something, trying to figure out what I can do to make that transform into a feeling of love and something else. That's what's productive. So I think to ignore resentment and to act like it's not happening and to, slide it under the rug, that's not helpful. That's not going to be a place where we are able to have a deep connection with our partner, with our spouse, with our girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever it is. Sometimes it can also be with family members, like a mom, a dad, different people. Sometimes when you get older, especially in your 20s, I feel like I see a lot of people talk about how they struggle with a relationship with their parents. So I know that's also a big one. I'm going to talk about mostly romantic relationships and resentment that can rise within that. But the same principle and the same ideas that I am talking about can apply to obviously anybody, because it's the same principle, just applied to different relationships and different dynamics. Something in particular within building resentment that I want to talk about, I think on both ends of this situation, is the idea of like asking someone over and over again to do something, or being on the receiving end of someone feeling like they're nagging you. Like that word nagging, I see a lot. And I think there's just always two sides to the coin. And I am not a professional in this. I say that every episode, and I will continue to say it because it's important for me to tell everybody that I'm not a professional, because I sometimes there's just so much online and so much advice, and you should do this, you shouldn't do this about your life. And if something that I say isn't helpful, like just it goes in one ear out the other. I don't believe I am perfect at this or like the most qualified person. I just like doing this work. I like working on myself. I like building deeper connections. I like finding ways that I can do something about a dynamic in a relationship. And I also enjoy feeling more love versus feeling more anger and feeling more resentment and letting things build up. So that's what we're talking about today. I went a little bit too into it already, but that's what we're talking about today. So I'm going to share a couple of tips that I've observed within my own, what's going on within me, and also things that I've observed just in the world in general and within relationships and people that I know, and also just online hearing from the experts of this matter. I'm also passionate because I really do believe that there is always more to learn within your dynamic in a relationship. Most of the time, unless it's a really unhealthy, really toxic, a really, really unhealthy patterned relationship and it's not going anywhere and no one ever changes and you try and no one and the other person never changes, and sometimes you get to a point where there's like nothing else for you to do. There's no, you're not working together. Those types of relationships are exhausting, and there is always a point where you're like, I can't do anything else, so I just am gonna have to pull back. And that's not what I'm speaking on today. I'm speaking on relationships that are important to you, that they're also willing to put in some effort. And sometimes when we like to do some of this work, we feel like the other person should like to do this introspective work as much as we do. And that's a fair thing to want, but also their effort and what they're working on isn't going to be the same as what you are working on. Like if you are listening to a bunch of relationship podcasts, or you're watching a bunch of movies or documentaries, or you're doing all this research online, and and that's a part of like the work that you're doing, and you're learning about yourself, or you're going to therapy, whatever it is. Sometimes someone else's work looks totally different. Maybe they're doing a career shift because they're trying to get in touch with themselves more. Maybe they're trying to work on their tone. Maybe they're trying to work on their like listening skills with you, and they might be things that are small and subtle, and they're not talking about it all the time. Just because that your partner doesn't talk about it as much doesn't make it less valuable of work that they're doing. You know what I mean? Like it can look different for two different people. I enjoy one aspect of working on myself, while my husband enjoys a totally different aspect and avenue of ways that he's working on himself to make our relationship better. Tempting to fall into a trap of thinking that our work is better than the other person's, but that's one way and one avenue where we fall into that building resentment thing, where we assume that they're not doing work, even though we may have not ever asked them what they're doing to like better themselves and better your relationship. It's scary nowadays for me to advocate for having faith in a partner and trusting in a partner, because there's so much online stuff about toxic relationships and unhealthy patterns. And so I don't want to fall into this, I don't know, like that I'm supporting bad relationships and unhealthy. Like I want to make that super clear. So much of this life has to do with relationships with other people, and a lot of our enjoyment with life is that. So to just push it aside and be like, well, if it's hard, it's not worth it. If there's one communication issue, then like we're done and I'm not going to try to fix it. Humans are deeper than that, and we have more of a capacity to love other people through difficult times than we might even know about ourselves, that we might even think. I just want to make it super clear that what I'm like the main topic of today's episode, and we're going to do in the details and pros and cons. Or wait, what is it? Dubs and L's, not pros and cons. Dubs and L's from the past 2 weeks. And then we're going to jump to the main topic. But to be clear, when I'm talking about relationships and these dynamics, I'm speaking to if anyone has a relationship that means a lot to them, and you both are working on things, and you have a desire to work through this resentment or to get rid of it or to not build it. This is to someone who has a desire to do that and to work on that and think about that and be reflective of something they can do to help the relationship be better. We're going to pause on that, and then we're going to go into dubs and L's, and then we're going to go into the details. So one of my my dub for the past 2 weeks has been, I've been able to see a lot of family and friends and had so much time kind of away from work, because I went to Nashville with Keaton's family, which was really fun. And I also apologize for the mishap of 2 weeks ago of the last episode. I thought everything was ready to go, and then it wasn't. And then I just dropped the ball. And so it was posted late, and I had to cut half the episode, which I don't think I said in the episode, but it was really short. I had to cut this whole segment out because the audio was weird. And then sometimes as a podcaster, I feel really guilty if I'm not so insanely proud of what I'm putting out, I am hesitant to even post it. I kind of force myself to, almost as an exposure of like, not every podcast episode is going to be perfect. You might not be perfectly eloquent in everything you're trying to express that day. Maybe your brain is having, brain fog, or maybe you're not as quick as you sometimes are, whatever the case is. The last episode I posted, I just hated that I just was sad that it was so short, and it just felt like not my best. So I felt sad about that. I just feel like I want to put my best stuff forward because people who listen and take the time to support me and to listen, like, they deserve that 1000%. So anything less than, I feel like it feels like someone's squishing my heart is how it feels. So, and I dropped the ball. But the dub from that is just that I have been so busy, and I'm so grateful to be so busy. It just means that you have a lot of people in your life that you love. So summer is always crazy here in Southern California because people just love to visit. And I love it. I love when people come to visit. It happens really fast, and it's always like 2 months of just nonstop visiting, which is just the best energy, and I love it. And at the end of all the trips and everything, I am pretty tired, and I'm excited to be back to like day-to-day normal stuff. Another pro was just that I was able to go to this lookout close to where I live over the beach, and was able to paint, and it was really peaceful. I did that on Sunday. I'm still not great at, and it was a really crazy thing to think that I would be able to go sketch and then paint, even a part of it, but I just went and did it anyways because you got to learn somehow. So I went to this overlook, and it was like way too much detail, and I had no idea where to start. I wanted to originally go to a place where I could just set up my easel and paint an ocean scene, because those are still difficult, but they're easier than like 1,000 different colors and cars and buildings and windows and yachts and boats and a million other things, which is what I ended up trying to recreate on that canvas. And it looked okay. I was proud of myself. There are a couple things that clicked for me, like some small details in terms of small details when it comes to perspective and scaling things. That's hard for me. So anytime I have anything click, it feels like, okay, my work is paying off. So that always feels good. It was just peaceful. And my sweet husband, I originally was trying to go to like that ocean outlook, like I was saying, but it was so busy where I wanted to go. And then I was sad because I got so excited to just go have a peaceful little painting afternoon. And then when I came home, he was like, well, let's just go somewhere else. And then he just made me feel better. And it's moments like that where I just sometimes think back to when my relationship OCD was ruining my life and made me think that he was like, that like he didn't love me, that I didn't love him, that our relationship was doomed, that it was going to end horribly. And you know what? I can't say that it's not going to end horribly, because that's what OCD wants me to do, is find the answer and for sure say that it's not going to. So I'm not going to give in, but I'm in such a different place with that. I say this to hopefully give hope to people who struggle with relationship OCD and think that they're never going to feel okay in their relationship again, or just feel okay in any relationship, because I had relationship OCD when I wasn't with my now husband. The back and forth of, do I like this person? Do I not? Like, that's happened just regardless of who I was with. Okay, an L from this past week was, I think, also the busyness. I just dropped the ball on a couple of things that I needed to get done. So shame on me for that. But I think another con has just been, I've really struggled with putting my phone down when I'm going to bed. So I always need something in the background. So I like having something in the background, but I have recently, like, I have this resistance to being quiet before bed and really letting myself wind down and journal and process things that happen throughout the day. I was really consistent and disciplined for a long time with it, but lately, maybe it's just because I've been busy, but whatever the case is, I haven't been as good at that. And I can feel it having the emotional and mental effects where I'm overthinking a lot. My brain feels like it's going a million miles per hour because I'm not compartmentalizing each day and processing things at the end of the day or in the morning the next day. But when you don't have that quiet time to have your brain kind of put things into their folders, into their little folders that they belong in at the end of the day, then it just kind of carries over to the next day, and then it carries over, even with sleep, is what I've noticed about myself. So my commitment to myself this week is, even if I feel so badly that I want to turn something on or that I want to have something in the background, like I just got to say no, and I got to give myself, and I just got to be disciplined. Like there's no other answer than just doing it and giving myself that space and that time. And the reason why that's an L is, I mean, it's obvious, but also it freaks me out sometimes when I feel like I need my phone in order to feel any kind of like peace. In my heart of hearts, I don't actually really believe that. And I know that's not true, but I do rely on my phone to kind of relieve some of my anxiety sometimes, and to satisfy almost like my OCD anxiety self, to quiet it by distraction. And I feel like I did that for so long before my big like episode with OCD and bipolar. So I don't want to get into that habit again. And so I'm very serious about not getting into that habit again of doing that. So when I am dropping the ball, so when I am not disciplined, I feel it and I notice it. And then I immediately am like, I don't want to go back to that place. And I don't want to rely on something, some device to make me feel connected to the world, because the world is happening right now. The most connected I can be to the world I'm in is not through my phone. It is with the ground underneath me, with the people that are around me, with the thoughts in my head, with the feelings in my heart. Like that's real. That's more real than what you have on your phone. It's sad that we have to remind ourselves in this day and age of that truth, that like you don't need your phone to feel at peace or to feel relief from anxiety. That's really not where you're going to get it. It can just be a distraction to keep you from being connected to something bigger than you, something that's really real and sustainable, versus a phone that's so endlessly, it's insatiable, you know? Okay, now really fast, we're going to go into the details and then we'll get back to the building resentment thing. Something in the details that I wanted to talk about lately, and I've talked about this a little bit, I've been really into vocabulary. I think I talked about it a couple weeks ago, but it's from playing Dungeons and Dragons and having to explain and communicate what they see, what they hear, what they feel, like all these, like what they're experiencing. And with that comes the responsibility of being able to describe things with good words that make sense. I don't know what it is, but sometimes I think I stop myself from saying words, or I get anxious, and so words don't pop into my brain to be able to explain something properly. And I also don't feel confident in my vocabulary. Like I was never a big reader. I just never got into like vocabulary, but I do like memorizing stuff. Like I like learning something new, having a flashcard, looking at the other side, saying, okay, got that one. Like I like that. I loved learning like that. So in order to use my brain and to teach myself more things, because sometimes when you're an adult, because sometimes when you get older and you're not in school, you miss the feeling of learning and your brain expanding. And so this is one way, and learning languages, which I tried doing that for a while, but then I didn't want to pay for the subscription, so I stopped. But that's another good thing for your brain. But vocabulary is another thing that I just wanted to learn more of, and new words, and be able to describe things more specifically to what's happening. But I also love it because the point of communication, right? We all speak these languages. We all communicate. The point is to simply be able to express what I'm thinking, what you're thinking, and understand each other, right? Like that's communication, is you just want to understand each other to some degree to be able to communicate. So as I was thinking about communication and why do I feel like I need to learn more vocabulary with like the storytelling, or not even the storytelling, just like the descriptions, is because with storytelling and poetry and music and songwriting, other artistic forms of speaking, like theater too, communication is less just about a simple, what am I thinking? What are you thinking? It's more of like you're trying to evoke a feeling. You're trying to evoke an emotion, evoke a feeling, and also curate like an internal or external experience through words and through vocabulary, and picking a specific word that will evoke something you want them to feel. But also it's not just about having them, making them feel something. It's about communicating on a deeper level to express really intricate ideas and feelings and thoughts. Like I've been trying to learn bigger words, not like longer words, just more descriptive words where there isn't as much room for interpretation to have it like put another meaning onto it. And an important part of that and learning vocabulary and how to communicate better is, instead of just this basic understanding of what the other person might be saying or feeling, it's like you're making sure with the use of specific words that they do understand and that it helps people actually understand an experience or a feeling for whoever's reading or listening to you. I used to think it was kind of pretentious to use big words, and you're just trying to be fancy or you're trying to sound smart. And sometimes I think maybe delivery or the intention behind it, sometimes that is what's happening. But I think if you do it right and you only really use good vocabulary, bigger words when it's really necessary. Like, is it going to add or is it going to distract? Like, is this going to actually add to the understanding of the experience someone's trying to express? Yes or no? And then insert the word that you think would be best there. Like, it's not for the sake of being fancy. It's for the sake of clarifying and for the sake of either leaving more or less room for interpretation. Depends on what you're going for, you know? Okay, now let's jump into the meat of today's episode. How to build connection versus resentment. Some of the most common ways that I've seen, that I've observed in others that they build resentment is, I think, number one, thinking that they're doing more than the other person. That you believe that, you know, we believe that we're doing more, we're contributing more, we're trying harder than the other person, and the other person's given up in some way, or you know, we may think they're being lazy, or they don't care as much, or they're not doing what we want them to be doing, and that can be hurtful, and we can feel hurt by that. The question that I would have on if you feel like you are doing more than your partner, the first question I would ask is, are you sure that that's true? Like, do you 100% believe that that's actually true? How sure are you? Because sometimes we might just think that, but we don't actually know what they're thinking about every day. We don't know what they're doing when we're not with them. We don't really know what's going on in their mind. We sometimes may just assume over being curious about what they're experiencing and what are ways that they're contributing that we're not. What burdens are they holding on their shoulders that we might not see because we're only thinking about the burdens on our shoulders. And I think just there's a really distinct mindset that we can fall into that builds resentment. And it is just like that you're doing more in some way and that they're not doing enough, or they're not as good as you, or they're not working as hard as you, or they're not taking enough of the share of the, like, whatever burden as you. I do think that before you get to certain conclusions, the number one thing that would be helpful is to be more curious about them and the things that they're having to worry about and struggle with and what they're experiencing. In regards to asking someone over and over again to do something, this is another way I think resentment builds, or just we feel unloved, we feel unheard, we don't feel cared for. We may think that we've asked like our partner to do something 30 times, you know, over the past couple of years, you know, whatever it is. And maybe this is a really hard thing for them to change. Change is hard, and it's possible. I talk about that all the time, that it's very possible to change things, but it does take time sometimes, or it takes a certain amount of understanding of one's self to actually make a change. And sometimes that's where the patience has to come in with somebody else. Now, I'm talking about small things. I'm not talking about someone who's going out and cheating. I'm not talking about someone who's hurting you deeply in some way over and over and over and over again. I'm talking about sometimes they leave their socks on the ground, or sometimes they cut you off in the middle of a sentence because they get excited and they say something and then you don't feel listened to. Like, they're not super intentionally hurting you, but it's something that you would prefer that they change. What becomes hurtful is if they genuinely are not showing any signs of trying to change something. But I also think, and this worked for me for small things that like I would get frustrated by, is I would then say, okay, he's not changing this. That means he doesn't love me. And in the context of a relationship, that was really not fair to assume. There's just certain things that take a long time for somebody to understand and to change. Most of these things were preferences of mine, and also things that, again, was a preference of mine. It wasn't like I'm going to die if I don't get this. I'm going to die if this never changes, or this is like deeply hurting me or really offensive in some way. It just, they're these small things that to us, they're just small things that I would prefer if they were done like X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to speak on this in two different perspectives. One is going to be the person who keeps asking and asking and asking. What's something that you would be able to do to help this situation so it doesn't keep building into resentment? Something I may suggest is ask them, to ask them and be curious, like try to have an open heart in a conversation with them, to be curious about why this is hard for them. Like, why is this small change or why is this small request really hard for you? Is it that you feel distracted? Is it that you feel overwhelmed by other things and this is like something you don't want to have to worry about? Is it just that you genuinely forget? Is it, what is it? And find that out. And it's not to say that that's going to invalidate how you feel hurt or not heard, but it's just to be curious, to understand what the actual reality is and to understand them more. So that way, when you have a conversation talking about something that you keep asking someone to do, it's not like snarky comments or passive comments and, in passing. You say it, already mad and have a closed heart and you're angry with them. And so they're going to be defensive because they maybe just worked a full day and, they thought about you a lot and they are working for you and for your family. And they maybe sacrifice something throughout the day that you don't know that they sacrificed in order to make you feel loved or happy or just to like get through the day. And so being curious and having an open heart in those conversations, I think just help lower the walls for both sides. And somebody who's on the receiving end who keeps getting asked over and over again might feel overwhelmed by life in general right now. Maybe they're struggling with something and maybe they've actually told you about that before, but you're focused on everything they're not doing. So then they don't want to tell you more because then they just feel like they're not doing enough. And that can also, like, everyone's going through their own internal experiences that we might just not be thinking of because we're focused on our own. A lot of communication issues happen because of assumptions. Together then with an open heart and with the walls maybe broken down a little bit because you're not being assumptive or accusatory. Instead, you're being curious and you genuinely want to know why and you want to understand each other. Then they might be more likely to feel less burdened. So then they have more mental capacity to comprehend and to process what you're asking and to have the discipline and the recollection to do the things that you are asking. So expecting perfection of the partner I think is obviously not going to be helpful because that's not going to be what you get. So then it's like, okay, well, what are my options? Go through those options. What sounds like the best for your relationship? It's probably not going to be passive comments all the time and snarky things that you say. And also now I'm mad at them. And so when the time that we have together, it's kind of tainted by this resentment that I have. And also she or he now feels not good enough. And so it's like now I can't even say anything because they're going to feel like it just turns into this whole cycle of no one wants to really talk about what's really happening. I think that's a great way to at least be curious about your partner more than assumptive and accusatory. That way, have a better perspective and a full picture of them versus what your brain is just telling you based off of the only things that you can see. Because that's all your brain can go off of. It uses all different types of things. It all uses a bunch of things to try to come to a conclusion. And sometimes we follow that a little bit too closely when really we are also capable, and it's also helpful to seek answers externally from the person that we're thinking about in our brain. On the receiving end of, if someone keeps asking you over and over again to do something, maybe you feel like, well, it's not that important. Like, I'm doing this all day, so why do I have to keep trying to do exactly what this person is asking me to do? Like, you might feel like you want your autonomy and you don't want to have to worry about certain things. So on the receiving end of someone asking you to do something over and over again, I think if you start to think of the word naggy, there's also some things that you can do to reshape the way that you're thinking of a request from your partner. And it's going to go back to curiosity as well. If you feel maybe you have a stressful job and it's physically demanding, and when you get home, you're really tired, or maybe you're a stay-at-home mom, you're working all day, and sometimes your partner maybe thinks that it's easy to be stay-at-home, or maybe they're thinking like, and maybe you're struggling mentally and it's hard for you to do the dishes, or whatever. It's usually small chores around the house. So maybe we start to feel buried because you're being asked to do a bunch of things, and you feel like they're not listening when you say like, I'm overwhelmed or whatever it is. And so you don't want to do it even more because you feel like you're going to get buried more and more. And then you start holding resentment towards the person who's asking you stuff because maybe you feel they don't understand what you're going through and they don't care. They just want you to get A, B, and C done. Like you're like just getting a checklist done. So on the receiving end, if you start to feel that resentment as well, the same thing applies of being curious as to why they are asking you to do this. Like, what does it mean to them? Why is it important to them? When my husband and I first started dating, we're both very different in terms of tidiness. I want you to immediately guess which one I am, if I'm tidy or not tidy. But if you guess that I'm not tidy, you are correct, because I like to joke around with him now. We can joke about it because when you get in a relationship and you're very different in some things, you just go through this, like, you kind of start arguing about things, and then eventually you figure out how to communicate better. You argue effectively, where it's not arguing. It's kind of just like, hey, can we talk about this? Cool. Awesome. And then you move on, and you're both better because of it, and you're both happier. But at first, it just takes a while to get there. When I lived with him for a little bit, I was a little bit messier, and he's very tidy and clean. He cleans everything once he's done with it. I like to take my time a little bit. Like, I'll leave laundry in the dryer for like a day, maybe 2 days, maybe 3 days. And I'm like, it's out of sight, out of mind. When I need it, I'll go do it. Same with like the dishes. I would not do them immediately. I would wait. I would rinse them, but then I wouldn't fully clean them. At first, when my husband would ask me to try to clean things as I go, I felt like he was treating me as, I felt frustrated by that, defensive immediately for some reason, which is funny now looking back, because I'm cleaner now, I'm tidy now. But that's because eventually, after some bickering back and forth and learning more and more about each other, I learned that the reason he was ever asking me those things is because he feels overwhelmed when he gets home. He feels anxious physically if it's messy. And his home, his place, it's important for him to feel peaceful and calm and clear-minded when he gets home. And for me, I think because I was mentally struggling and I was mentally all over the place, I didn't even really remember what that felt like. And I also didn't realize how much my environment around me affected my mental health too. So we both had to be like humbly approach and be curious about each other. And it took a while to get there. Like, sometimes it takes a while to understand what you're doing wrong and then be able to course correct and say, oh, I'm being really prideful about this, or I'm not really listening to my partner, or, oh, I'm assuming the worst. After a while of realizing what we're doing wrong, we learned, okay, we just need to be curious and be humble and ask each other and figure this out and then work together. And now I'm definitely still more messy. Like, I can survive in the mess. I can be dirty. Not like I can physically be dirty, honestly. Like, I'd be fine on Survivor, I think. I have changed a lot of my normal habits that I used to have when, my mental health wasn't all there because I used to procrastinate cleaning. But now it's like you clean as you go. Every once in a while, sure, there's a dish when I'm on like in a hurry, and same with him. Like it's just normal day-to-day things. But now it's not a point of contention or a point of anxiety or stress for either of us, because now we know what matters to the other person. He knows that I didn't really grow up where cleaning was number one priority. And also just because of what I deal with mentally, it's have to really make a conscious effort. Like it sounds silly maybe to other people, but I may have to make a conscious effort to sit down and do it, and to just be okay with just doing that chore for now. And it's helped. Like it's actually really helped me mentally. It's helped him because he's learned more patience, like that we're all just mentally different and we experience life differently. I hope that story helps kind of put it into perspective and into a real life situation of sometimes situations that can make us build resentment and feel like so disconnected from our partner, and that there is always a way that we can course correct and kind of get back on track and learn. Also, and I say this a lot when talking about relationships, but both can be true. Two things can be true at once in regards to, you might still feel hurt that they're not listening to you, or you might feel hurt that they keep getting frustrated with you even though you're trying to do something. They could be hurt that you're not listening to them, or they could be hurt that, and both can be true, right? Like, I think one of the most valuable lessons I've learned from being in my relationship is what it's like to really love somebody, to consciously make an effort every single day to kind of reset and to learn more about them, and always be curious about them, always be open to learning more about them, to never assume that you know everything about them. Because I think that takes a romance out of relationships a little bit, because then there's nothing more to learn. Like there's no mystery, there's no curiosity. And it doesn't have to be huge mysteries. Like it just can be a small thing about what you did today, and what's something that you were proud of yourself for, what scared you today, what did you overcome today. Like always being consciously curious about your partner, especially in times where you're struggling to connect, or when you're struggling to understand each other and it feels like you're speaking two completely different languages. Be curious and be excited to learn about them. When your partner approaches you humbly and kindly and with open arms and open heart, how much better do you respond to that versus when they maybe say something defensively or snarky or, passively? That's not helpful. It doesn't feel good on the receiving end, and it's not going to make you want to immediately open up to them. So if you're ever unsure what to do to kind of connect with your partner, just think of what you would want done to you. Take a chance, I think that's all that I was going to talk about that, but that I could talk about that forever, because relationships just feel complex. But a lot of the things that we can do to help feel better are pretty simple, but they, again, I guess they are kind of complex, but it's kind of like a simple principle, but it's hard to apply them. Okay, I got a Dear Abby. And there's a couple different things, but I'm only going to do one at a time. And then I'll do the rest another day, because I don't want to jump around too much, because I already jump around so much when I record episodes. The first thing that they asked: Dear Abby, I have 3 things on my mind writing this in. And then she lists 3, but I'm only going to do one. I'll do the other ones on another day. She says, first one is overconsumption. Physical is overconsumption in general, just to speak about overconsumption. Physical, and then in parentheses, like clothing, makeup, etc. And virtual, social media. I feel like I spend so much time watching people do stuff instead of doing them myself. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. So I read that while I was at work today, because I was planning this episode. Not at work, just during lunch. The first thing that I started to think of in terms of overconsumption was to give yourself a chance, honestly. Like, and what I mean by that give your brain a chance. Give yourself a chance. What I mean by that is there's not really an answer. It's basically what I said before. There's not an answer to not overconsume in regards to there's not like a cycle, there's not something that I can say or an idea or something that'll get you to physically not overconsume. It's really just going to be a conscious choice and effort and to hold yourself accountable to not overconsume. But some things I will say around it to maybe motivate or to inspire or to keep you to stay or to get you to stay disciplined is to give yourself a chance and give your brain a chance, because you might feel like you have to keep over consuming or consuming more content, more this, more that, to get the dopamine hit, right? We all hear about to get that hit of something, to feel like you're doing something. And that dopamine is real and it can be really addictive, but also your brain is really adaptable. So if you really feel like you're over consuming, trust that feeling and trust the fact that you keep thinking about that, because you probably are. And I think it's important to break down what overconsumption really even means for you and to all of us. But I think a general breakdown, and this might not be the exact definition, but this is how I perceive it and this is how I experience it, is I think I need more than I actually do to be happy and to feel full. I'm kind of grasping at things to try to fill something, fill some void, to be distracted, to feel excitement, to feel motivated. Like I'm thinking I need way more than I actually do to feel satisfied, to feel happy, to feel joyful. And I think another part of it is when you're not taking the time to look around and realize everything that you do have. Sometimes it can be kind of scary to realize after a while how much you've been focusing on what you don't have and what you want, what you need, what you want. And then when you take a second and you kind of zoom out for like literally mentally zoom out and you look at everything that you have, even in your room, even in your kitchen, in your house, in your office, in your bedroom, and or the people or the apps that you have, the Instagram people that you follow, you already have so much. When you take that time to zoom out, you sometimes feel like, oh my gosh, wait, I actually do have so much, sometimes even too much, and you feel like, oh my gosh, I have too much. So it's helpful to remind yourself what that actually means, because then you can start to break down why you're doing it, where you fall into that trap, and then also how to not fall into the trap moving forward. I think it's also just vain. Like it feels vain when I buy more clothes, when I buy more makeup, or when I think that I need more, different. The beauty of the stuff that I have starts to fade. And it's not because the clothes have changed. The clothes have not changed at all. The makeup hasn't changed. The content that I'm consuming hasn't changed. It's just that we think we need more, so our perception of it changes. So the beauty starts to fade, because the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And I think with clothes, if you think you need the newest shirt, the newest dress, the newest everything, and you need the new trendy way of dressing, you need everything new, you need more. Everything that you once thought was beautiful is now not beautiful anymore. And it makes you feel frustrated. Sometimes that just means you need to clear out your closet. Doesn't mean you need to buy new stuff, but you need to clear your closet maybe. But also, I think, especially if you had just bought something and you really liked it and now for some reason you don't like it, just be curious if that's because you think you need something new, fresh. But if you just let that go, thinking that you need more and new, and you almost take scissors mentally and you have all of these, like this noise that your brain has of, I need this. I saw this on Pinterest. I saw this on Instagram. I need this. In order to be happy, I need this. Blah, 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 blah. Let that all be there. Let it all jumble together in one tiny balloon that's just floating around. Everything's just flying around in that balloon. And then the string appears, and then mentally just like cut it and watch the balloon fly off into the distance of all the things that you no longer need to feel happy and to feel full and satisfied. Doesn't mean that you can never buy anything or you can't enjoy buying new stuff, because everyone likes buying stuff. Everyone likes buying a new dress every once in a while, or, whatever it is, something you'll actually really love and use. But that's not overconsumption. Overconsumption is when you almost feel numb to it and you're just more and more and more, and you're just getting more and more and more. And you're not feeling gratitude. But to go now back to virtual overconsumption, give your brain a chance, just commit to a week. And even though it's like, but what if I miss out on funny videos? What if I miss out on new YouTube posts? What if I miss out on a new influencer that blah, 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 and a new product? Well, all these things your brain is trying to convince you that you're going to miss out on if you're not on your phone as much. It's just total BS. Like, it really does not matter. Like, it really doesn't matter. Unless you feel like so fulfilled and so satisfied with watching a lot of Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is. But if there's a part of you that's like, no, I don't, something's missing. I'm missing something. I'm not feel like I'm living my life. That take that very seriously and listen to that, because through that and through these ideas that you have and these really heartfelt realizations that you have, that's where you'll start to feel like you're really living your own life. And then social media can just be a small supplemental fun thing every once in a while that you jump on and say, oh, what's this person up to? Or what's this influencer posting about? And, and it's fun with your friends or whenever. And then it's fun again versus exhausting and all consuming. But your brain is adaptable. And if you stop feeding it all of the dopamine, it's going to be fine. And it's eventually going to learn what's actually really valuable. But you have to help it, It's not just going to be immediately you don't care about going on social media. It's wired into our brains at this point. So we have to be on top of it and responsible for not feeding it what it wants. You're not alone in the struggle with overconsumption. I think that's just one of the plagues of our day and age today, especially, is there's so much noise. There's so many products. There's so much new stuff every second that we see. And maybe the world before, there was always new stuff coming out with new snake oils or whatever they had. But like now we see all the new stuff. So we think we need more and all the new. But it is actually really helpful to remember how short life is. Sometimes when, like I was saying earlier, when I struggle with going to bed and having no screens for a while before bed, I have to remind myself about what do I care about more deep down? Do I care about getting that hormone thing firing in my brain by looking at social media and having these fake experiences that my brain thinks I'm having? Or do I care more about maybe feeling a little bit uncomfortable and restless for a while until my brain is like, okay, we're fine. We don't need the dopamine right now. And then I get to do something that's lasting and that is really actually integrating me into the real world, the spinning earth ball that we are living on. And that's connecting me more to a soulful place versus a distractive, superficial, like my brain's making me do this place. Just think about the possible wasted potential of the time that you spend on your phone, time that you spend and money that you spend on things that you really deep down don't really care about, because that sucks. Okay, I think that's all for this week's episode of Dear Abby. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'm very happy to have been able to record today and hang out because this is just my safe place. If you guys want to support the podcast, you can leave a rating and review on Apple and Spotify, as well as subscribe, comment on YouTube. If you want to go above and beyond, you can post a clip of my podcast on your story, or just click the share button underneath the Spotify episode or the Apple Podcast episode, and just share it to your story. You don't have to say anything. Just to share would be super helpful for me to get the word spread about my podcast. If you guys want to hear anything specific from me, you can text or call the number in the description below and leave a voicemail, as well as you can message me on Instagram at any time, and I will try to reply as soon as I can. I hope you guys have a wonderful, beautiful weekend. Have fun. Take yourselves out. Be kind to yourselves. Love you. Bye.
taking a ride to journey 눈치 보면서 들어가 할 때 찾아 나머진 바빠 개설레임 바꾸는 사람들